But we'll kick things off with a small little news, but you may not have heard. Mauricio Pochettino looks like he will be the new head coach of the US men's national team. Just a reminder what he's done in the lead up to this. He comes from Chelsea after, second half of the season before he fell out with management. He, of course, left there. Before that, PSG, where he won the League he won the domestic league. Spurs, of course, led them to the Champions League, made his name really at Espanyol and Southampton. For more on this, Mark Ogden joins us. Mark broke the story, but I want to start with you, Jeff Carlisle. Jeff, apart from, of course, covering the US for a very, very long time, just as a fan, how excited are you by this prospect?
I'm very excited. I mean, this is a manager that U.S. fans have been dreaming about for decades, especially with this very talented generation of players. The thought has always been, yes, this generation of players has performed solidly, at the 2022 World Cup, but how far could they go if they had a top manager overseeing things? And now fans are going to get their chance to see precisely that. And, it's a guy in Mauricio Pochettino who comes in with a reputation of doing very well with young players, with playing a very aggressive pressing style. I think that fits the current U.S. player pool. And ahead of the 2026 World Cup, which the U.S. is co-hosting with Mexico and Canada, there's just a lot of reasons to be excited to see how far this manager can take this team.
Take us behind the scenes, Mark. How did this happen?
So, obviously, Greg Berhalter left the post after the Copa America. Bit of a bad performance by the US in not getting out of the group. And right from the outset, there was a kind of a twin-track approach by the US Federation. There was talk about internal candidates or domestic candidates, but there was also a real push for, a box office world-class coach. Now, Jurgen Klopp was the obvious candidate right at the outset. They approached Jurgen Klopp. It was pretty clear that he wasn't interested, but maybe a month ago, Pochettino's people were making it known that he was keen. He was keen for two factors. First of all, he thinks that the US have got a very good squad. Like Jeff said, a squad of young players, but players that have now played in the Champions League in Europe. Christian Pulisic, Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie. These are players that are familiar to Pochettino, and he thinks they've got a good squad. But equally, he was quite keen to move into international management as well. Now, it's no secret that the English FA were quite keen to talk to him about the vacancy with the England team, but he's decided that the US job is a better challenge. He knows Matt Crocker, the US Soccer Federation technical director. They worked together briefly at Southampton about 10 years ago. So Pochettino thinks this is a job which, in some ways, it's a no-pressure job. Now, that obviously the US at home, at a host World Cup, they have to do well, but there's no expectancy that the US are going to win it. I think if the US get out of the group, maybe get to the quarterfinals or maybe the round of 16, that will be a success depending on, who they meet. So I think this for Pochettino is a great opportunity to manage an emerging force in the world game. I think the US Federation see him as a guy that has got credentials. I think, beneath the likes of, Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, Carlo Ancelotti, I think Pochettino is in that second tier of great coaches. So he's an exceptional hire for the US. It shows real ambition, but I think it points to the fact that he's a great communicator with players, with fans, with the media. I think he will be loved in the US because of the way he works. He's multilingual as well. He works across all the communities in the sense that he can attract and inspire players from all corners of the globe. So it's a great fit for Pochettino. I think he's kind of been disillusioned a little bit by his last two jobs in the club game. Chelsea, we know, didn't go too well. PSG ended in a difficult way, and I think he sees this as a great challenge. It's a fantastic opportunity for Pochettino. USA at home in a World Cup. Massive earning potential off the pitch as well. He could become a star off the pitch in the US if the team does well and he uses his personality, which is this natural personality that he has. And for the US, they show that they're serious. It's a real sign of ambition that US mean business in the World Cup they're co-hosting with Mexico and Canada.
Does this make sense, Stevie, from Pochettino's point of view?
It absolutely does make sense. I would question if he thinks that there's going to be no pressure. He's in for a bit of a surprise if things don't go well.
Not really.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know about that, Dan.
Well, it's not like you're in Argentina, coaching Brazil, not in Spain.
Well, it's not Argentina. It's not Argentina.
What have you got, Seb and Merck shouting at you every Monday?
It's not Argentina, but, the public in this country want to see silky soccer. And the reason they haven't seen it from the US national team is because that's not what they're good at. And so if Pochettino takes over and doesn't get results, it's going to be, well, hold on a minute, this guy Pochettino, he was supposed to be turning our so-called golden generation that everybody keeps throwing out, which is complete nonsense. What's he turning them into? So it's not exactly Argentina, you are correct. But if he thinks there's going to be no pressure, I'll tell you, as soon as they start losing games, there'll be a little bit of dissent. Look at your face.
I don't know where you're living. Where are you living? Where's all this dissent coming from?
Live in the football world.
Yeah, but it's a completely different world, isn't it, over here compared to
Well,
there?
if you're going to compare to Argentina, then of course it's
Well,
it's not
inevitably
quite
you're
as
going to
bad.
compare it to the big countries.
I'm just telling you.
Say, there's
if
no
he thinks
pressure. There is really no pressure.
If he thinks he's coming over here to
no one's going to judge you to the World Cup. Things go on the World Cup, then that's it. Then it's fine.
If he thinks he's coming over here to have a nice big cigar, big fat cigar,
I don't think anybody says that he is going to have a big cigar.
Oh well, you know better. You know best.
Jeff, let's talk about this group of players, of course, that the US have, because there's been a lot of talk. Greg Berhalter, his system wasn't suited to these players, which everyone's very excited about. Yet you take a look at the starting 11, there's a lot of players that we know by name, that we associate with clubs in Europe, but haven't performed at the level that we've expected them to. So if Pochettino doesn't work, then you look at these players and you think, well, actually, maybe some people are wrong and we've overhyped them right from the off.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the danger, throughout this whole process with Greg Berhalter, because anytime the U.S. didn't get a result that they should have, or they played poorly, immediately the blame was placed on Greg Berhalter. And so now that the U.S. has a top coach, coming into the team, I think the players are officially out of excuses. I mean, they're going to be scrutinized to a much greater degree than they have in the past. There have been questions about how good this team really is, and legitimately so, because I'd say in the last 18 months, this group of players has not really progressed in the way that a lot of people hoped that they would. Some of that's been due to injury. I mean, when you think about like Tyler Adams and what he's been through, but some other club situations, when you think about Matt Turner at Nottingham Forest, situations like that, there's a reason in some respects why these players have not gotten better. It's not just down to the coach. So I think these players are going to be really put under the microscope now and say, okay, you've got this reputation behind you. Now it's time for you to show it.
Why have these players stumbled, Stevie? Or is that too much of a general question in that you've got to look at individuals? Gio Reyna, of course, injured. They're not getting back into the Borussia Dortmund team. Matt Turner making individual mistakes for Forest. Things just not quite progressing as we expect from these players who we were excited about.
I'd have to think that, to progress as a player, you have to believe and understand what the coach is wanting you to do. And if nothing else, it looks as though too many of the current squad, or certainly the squad that Berhalter had, didn't believe or understand really the job and how to get better.
Right.
Now, the good thing about Pochettino is his background is absolutely about bringing along younger players who actually were good enough to start in the Premier League to begin with, but he brought them all along and made them better. I listened to an interview with Conor Gallagher, who'd played in the Premier League with Norwich, who was at Chelsea already, and who he said he definitely made them better in the short space of time he was there. So all of those things pertaining to your question are absolutely right up the street of Pochettino, and it definitely sounds good for the players.
What's the caveat in all of this, Jeff? What could be the negative?
Well, I mean, the negative is that, Pochettino doesn't have any experience in international soccer. You talk to managers who have done both, and they talk about how, they miss the day-to-day that goes on at the club level, where you're able to really build relationships, you're able to really nurture these players along. And this is a situation where Pochettino is not going to see these guys for several weeks at minimum. And so, some managers chafe against that. Some don't enjoy it. I think about Fabio Capello back in the day. I mean, he was a wizard at club level, but didn't really hit the heights at the international game. So, I think that's something that he's going to have to think about. But I think in terms of a positive, I think it's like what Mark alluded to earlier. Pochettino's going to be free to work in a way that he hasn't been able to in his last two club jobs. He's not going to have someone looking over his shoulder saying, do this, do that, or, why are you playing this guy? I mean, he's going to be able to be given the space to do his work. And so I think from that standpoint, it's going to, that's why in part this job is so appealing to Pochettino.
What does this mean, this decision, Mark, regarding his compensation from Chelsea?
Well, that's the kind of the wrinkle in the deal so far. So basically, where we're at the moment is that Pochettino, I've been told, that other people have reported as well, he's agreed to take the job. But right now, it's not a signed, done deal because there's still an element of compensation to come from Chelsea. Now, it could be as much as £10 million, $30 million. So that's because he left in the summer by mutual consent with a year left on his contract. Now, Chelsea were happy for him to leave, and he was happy to leave. But still, he was under contract. Now, there is a suggestion that I've been told that Chelsea were expecting compensation had he moved to a fellow top six Premier League club. Now, that won't apply to the US, but Pochettino is still owed some money as part of his package from Chelsea. Now, I don't expect that to be a massive hurdle to overcome, but it's still an issue that has to be addressed. So between now and, I guess, maybe a week, 10 days, I guess the US Federation will be trying to negotiate a way for Pochettino to get out of that situation. I think Chelsea will move it along fairly quickly, and then he can take the job. Because from Chelsea's perspective, it's a good move for them as well, because he's not going to another club where he could potentially embarrass Chelsea. So he's off the club scene, he's going to an international team, different continent. It's great for Chelsea. He's out of sight, out of mind. So I think it suits all parties to get it wrapped up fairly quickly. But that is the one glitch right now where it means the deal hasn't been done. But I think the US play Canada in early September. I would expect this to be done well wrapped up by then before Poch takes charge of his first game against Canada, I think, in Kansas City.
Mark, this will be 2026 and done, I imagine. Yeah? This isn't going to be a long-term thing.
Well, it depends how much pressure he's under, as Stevie says. I mean, it depends how far he goes in the World Cup. Listen.
Don't start.
The thing is, with the US...
I've got it down. He's got the big cigar going, yeah.
If he does well, I mean, the US... One thing that appeals to Pochettino and the people that are close to him, if he does well, the US sporting landscape is built around successful people, winners. And if he has an element of success, I mean, I can't quantify what success would be for the US. Jeff would have a better idea. But I guess, again, if the US gets the quarterfinals in 2026, that would be successful. He may think that it's such an enjoyable ride, he stays on. Because, as I said earlier on, he's been at Chelsea and it's not been great. He's been at PSG. I don't know where Pochettino would go in the club game right now, because I don't think he would go to Bayern Munich, for instance. He's ruled out Barcelona many times because of his connections with Espanyol. So I'm not quite sure which avenues are open to in the club game. So the international game might be his best route. So who knows? I mean, listen, it's a great job for 2 years. And if he does well, I could see him staying on, because you get momentum and the possibility of taking the US to different levels. Somebody at some point is going to turn the US into a real force in the world game. It may be Pochettino, it may be somebody else. But I think that possibility is what appeals to him as well. So I think you're right. I think it's more likely than not that he would return to the club game in 2 years' time. But there has to be a job for him. And if there's no job for him, as he's shown now, he's willing to take a bold move to take the international game back seriously. So who knows?
Final point on this, Jeff, and to Mark's point, how do you quantify success for the US under Pochettino?
Well, for me, it would be, reaching the quarterfinals. I mean, I think that would be the minimum. The U.S. has reached the round of 16 plenty of times in previous World Cups, but they haven't really been able to get past that point, save for 2002 when they reached the quarterfinals. I think a lot of fans are going to be clamoring for a semifinal showing. I mean, this is a tournament that's being held on home soil. I think another possible sticking point for Pochettino is he doesn't have a ton of time to really implement his system. He is from the Bielsa school, so he's going to have to really spend some time on the training ground with his players in terms of how he wants his team to press, when, how he wants his team to play. But there's only about, I'd say, 9 international windows that he's going to have to work with between now and the World Cup. So time is going to be of the essence, but fans aren't going to care about that. I mean, they're going to want to see success right away. And I think their expectations are a quarterfinal showing at minimum.